So I'm really happy to welcome the participants and also Dr. Dan Hansen for this webinar series organized by Department of Psychology, the American College Madurai, Mental Health Webinar Series 2020, and all on behalf of all the association institutes like Madras School of Social Work, Chennai, Department of Psychology, Madurai, Kamaraj University, MS Chalamuthu Institute of Mental Health and Rehabilitation, Madurai, Redpond Educational and Psychological Research Center, Madurai, Psycho-Oncological Association, Turkey. Of all of the associating institutes and also the American College, I'm happy to welcome you all for our 242nd webinar, and on the topic memory improvement next generation. So now I request Subhashri ma'am to welcome the speaker or introduce the speaker of the day.
I'm really very happy and proud to introduce the speaker for today, Dr. Hansen. He's a very exciting speaker, and we have him on this particular, virtual media among with us, and to introduce something very exciting topic. Improvement of memory for next gen. It is, and he is also a CEO of CEO and also a bestseller author of 12 secret languages, and he is among with us today to talk on memory improvements next gen, and he is going to give us understand how to build an impressive memory, find your memory personality, and along with the 12 secret languages, he is going to also enable 12 of us to make use of the test also. It is going to be an exciting offer for all of us, and we are really eager to learn from Dr. Hansen on how to improvise our memory, because it is a very important component for professionals like psychologists and anyone, any profession. So, welcome you, Dr. Hansen, for your wonderful presentation among us. And we have participants from all walks of life, mostly predominantly psychologists, as well as special educators, and some of the parents are also joining with us. Kindly, bear with people who may not be able to appear in the video because of the bandwidth issues. Please, over to you, Dan Hansen.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm planning to give you 4 takeaways in the presentation. The first one is how do you build long-lasting memory? And how do you retrieve this memory without fail? Because building memory is one chapter, you could say, but actually retrieving it is a different thing. Obviously, that is where the value really shows itself. The second takeaway is that I will help you to reveal your own memory personality. And understand how you make use of what I call the 12 secret languages, which is an understanding of human memory autonomy. And I'll explain all these things here with some illustrations also to make it a little easy and a little entertaining. But after this presentation here, we will move on to the free online memory personality test. We will just together make sure that everybody has found out how to access it. The fourth takeaway is either a Q&A, and it depends on you, of course, if you want to discuss further in depth. Alternatively, I have prepared a practical exercise. The example I have picked out is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. But the first question I think we need to ask ourselves is, why is memory important at all? And obviously, if we don't have any memory, we can't do even the most basic things in life. If you can't remember how to put a foot in front of the other foot, you can't walk anywhere. But memory has effects on our general behavior also in a way that I think many of us are maybe not so conscious about. To give you a few examples, the way that you remember something is also the way that you can communicate. I cannot communicate something I have not built memory about, unless it's some kind of divine revelation, of course. I don't know how many of us are capable of that. Communication is based on memory we have already built. The same thing when it comes to teamwork. The way you communicate is affecting that kind of teamwork you are having. And it is also depending on which you have successful communication with and who you have unsuccessful communication with. With other words, who you might get in conflicts with. Your memory is also the one who's deciding which skills you can build. There are some things that we find very easy to remember, and some things we find hard to remember. What we're going to walk through today is that it is not the same things. Many of you, I assume, have experiences with students, pupils that are either excelling and they remember, they have a sticky brain, as some call it, right? And some are really struggling with remembering the things you're teaching them. The skills that we build is very much based on the memory we can build. We have some favorites. There are certain ways that we remember better, and there are certain ways that are more difficult. I will show you in the 12 secret languages how that actually shows. So in some cases, you are able to build certain skills. And all of you joining here today, you have certain skills you have built. To be able to reach the place you are today, you have needed to be successful in memory. It has decided your job profile or your career path as it is right now. Where the jobs that you can be successful in is also the jobs that is deciding which kind of role you'll have in teams. Many of you are leaders, I assume, right? If you don't teach, you will be having some peer groups where you'll be leading some teams one way or another. Memory you build is affecting the skills that you build, affecting your job profile, your career, and even the team role you play. What often happens in companies, for instance, let's take an example of an IT company, is that you might have a very good coder, a person that is good in remembering coding. And then you're thinking, no, he will also be a good team lead. But there is no guarantee that he's a good team lead because it's a different kind of memory or different kind of behavior you need to have to be a good team lead than just sitting and coding. These are some quite important things to understand when we're talking about memory, that it's actually affecting our whole life path. How does our memory work? See, I started this journey maybe 30 years ago. I did a lot of research, also academically. In the process, I came across neuroscience, and you will be able to see in the presentation that I'm giving that there is clear threads going back to neuroscience, also learning theories. And I also studied heart-brain connection research and the science of meditation. I am an avid meditator myself. I spend 2 hours every day on my meditation practice. It's actually the reason why I shifted to India 7 years ago to follow this practice here. It's called heartfulness, if any of you have come across it. The world headquarters used to be in Chennai. Now it has recently shifted to Hyderabad. So I also shifted from Chennai to Hyderabad. What we have come to know is that memory is not just placed in the brain. We can have muscle or bodily memory, and we can have a memory that are stored in our heart. Mostly our emotions will be stored in a field around the heart. Besides that, I have studied a lot of personality profiling psychology, especially neuro-linguistic programming. I have studied intensely, and their meta programs. And Myers-Briggs, probably many of you have heard about Myers-Briggs also. They're probably the most successful corporate personality profiling system. Those I have all studied intensely. Finally, I have gone in depth with a lot of practical memory techniques, trying to understand how we actually form our memory. When are we efficient and when are we inefficient? Because one thing is that we remember in different ways, but there are certain techniques also that can make us more or less successful. I will give you some practical examples on the way, but this is just like a little overview I'm sharing with you here. So now you have been watching me a couple of minutes. I'm Dan from Denmark. I originate from Denmark. I shifted to India 7 years ago and have settled here in India. Another small takeaway I wanted to give you here is in the way I'm presenting my name here, Dan from Denmark. This is actually a memory technique. And a little question for all of you. Who of you have a memorable presentation of your name? I would suggest you to consider to make some kind of small memory technique around your name, because being remembered can be a huge strength. When you are having a lot of students, it's nice they know your name. Obviously, when you do networking, it is nice that you are being remembered. If you are in some kind of formal situation where you have to do presentations, it's nice to be remembered after. Many of us, we will get opportunities from unknown sources. I could say our example also, Dr. Suresh, our roads has basically crossed in a way that we thought maybe not possible. So likewise, if you're able to make a little memorable name, memory technique or visual, it will actually help you a little. You can think about it. Dan from Denmark, maybe some of you will see the Danish flag. Maybe some of you will think of Denmark, what does it remind you of? Some will think it's maybe dairy or milk or cows. But what happens is that a small video is created when you do your name presentation in this way here. So my academic background is that I'm a Oecon. I studied in university in Denmark. I'm a CEO of 2 companies presently. So I have been practicing all these things here, especially in one of the companies that are into visual marketing, digital marketing, where we work a lot with making especially video presentations memorable. So what actually works and what doesn't work. And I think many of us know that video in many cases can be very, very strong. Some say that an image is 1,000 words, and some say that a video is 1,000 images. I have been able to test these theories here very thoroughly with a lot of clients. The third point I wanted to highlight is that I have been studying neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. And I was hired by the biggest company in Denmark that were doing these training. I did my training in Denmark and in the US. And I found this very, very interesting, how to break down the understanding of how we function as humans. And not least trying to find out how do we become successful with certain things that we want to learn. And that can be any topic, like now we have just discussed about communication, we have discussed about teamwork, about the conflict resolution, job profiling, how do you find out which jobs you fit nicely in, how do you lead teams. So NLP was giving a lot of very practical hands-on experience to me. And it helped me to lift me a little out of my little academic approach to the universe. And frankly spoken, I have tried to make this presentation in a way that you can have a very practical takeaway. We're finishing this program here. I have done a lot of corporate and organizational trainings. So far, I'm an author of 2 books, and I'm soon to release the 3rd book, Memory Improvement Next Gen. It's also the topic of our little program here today. I am offering 7 one-hour webinars that I normally offer for free. So if any of you have the interest to dive a little deeper into this kind of memory techniques or memory improvement, you're very welcome to reach out to me. I would be very happy to meet up with any of my dear peers. I'm calling you my dear peers now, that are interested in the same topics of helping humans on their way. Let's try and go into the program itself and try and understand how do we actually improve our memory. First thing is to understand that there is 3 basic phases when we are building our memory. Sometimes I call it building memory muscle. So that you can understand, it's basically like we build muscle. Everybody can build memory, maybe a little in the beginning, but you can become stronger and stronger until you can lift anything. But there are 3 phases we need to be alert about. The first phase is receiving, that we need to receive information, obviously. We need to expose ourselves to the information we want. Next phase is storing. If we don't store it, obviously we can't make use of it later. But most importantly, we need to retrieve it. And very often the way we store it has to be linked to the way we retrieve it also. I will get a little into this later, but I would like you to be alert about these 3 phases here, which are the basics of understanding the coming illustration also. So let's first try and understand how we are receiving millions of bits of information per second. Some people talk about 5 or 6 or 10 million bits of information per second we are receiving. Try and see this illustration here. I'm going to break it down step by step, but this is the basic illustration I'm going to take us through here, where you can understand we need to receive some information here, we need to store some information, and we need to retrieve some information. So these are the 3 phases that we have to walk through. Let's try and break it down step by step to understand what happens when we are trying to create or build memory in the human anatomy. First step is that we receive this information here. These are bits of information, and the information are partly coming from outside. Like right now, you are receiving a lot of information from me, so I'm exposing you to some outside information. But you might also sit and have self-talk. You might sit and see some visuals. You might have some feelings, some recollections of something that happened. So you are actually receiving both information from outside and inside your body. The most is just filtered away, because we can simply not handle 5 to 10 million bits of information per second, obviously. So normally we are talking about, we are maybe receiving 5 to 20 bits of information per second. This is also explaining why so many of us experience the same situation completely different. It's because we don't focus on the same things, right? The second step is that we need to receive this information. And from neuroscience, we know that we have what we call sense memory. Sense memory that basically transports the information to our short-term memory. You can see here it's the visual are visualized with some eye experience, the auditive, the hearing, and the talking and the self-talk is symbolized with the ears. And the psychosomatic, the psyche is the emotions, the feelings, and the somatic is the physical body, which is partly our physical senses, the touch, and it's partly the kinesthetic sense, which is our capacity to move muscles and bones to navigate our physical body. So I have clubbed psyche and somatic together because these are the way we mostly experience ourselves. We see things, we hear and think and self-talk and talk, and then we experience ourselves through our emotion and the feeling of our physical body. So obviously you could say, why didn't you include the smell and the taste? It's because for us as a species, those senses are not of much importance in our daily day. If I had done this presentation for cats, say, I would definitely have to include the smell sense. Some people are talking about cats having a sense focus of up to 90% related to the smell. Obviously, we know it from dogs. They can smell explosives, they can smell illness. Nowadays, they're trying, a couple of countries, I know Finland, for instance, they're trying to train dogs to smell COVID. They're able to smell psychological conditions. They're able to smell drugs. We know samples of animals that use their smell so much more than we do. But in our case, smell and taste has been filtered out to make it more simple to understand how we actually navigate in this world. Let's try and have a look at the next step here. The sense memory here, which lasts a few seconds, it's still way too much for us to handle, to store in the short-term memory. So again, here there's a lot of filtering. And some of that filtering is happening consciously. This is why I've symbolized it here, that she's focusing. Right now, I hope, I assume that you are focusing on the content I'm talking, but obviously there's a whole universe around you, right? In the neighbor room, where your attention could also be. But if you use your consciousness focusing on this, obviously the result will also be stronger. And you probably know it from many of your students that have maybe some kind of lack of focus. Many people have experienced the problems with all the mobile, the gadgets we have, where the retention span is maybe just a few seconds before you again need to be rewarded. This is also about how you stay focused on your topic. From the visual sense memory, it will move into some kind of visual storage. It will move from some auditive storage. There will be some psychosomatic storage. So let's have a look at that. So this is the storage. Basically, we can store things either intuitive or intellectual. When we talk about learning theories, the intuitive learning state is a diffused learning state. It's a subconscious learning state, sometimes an unconscious learning state also maybe. The focused learning state, as we call it in learning theories, is the intellect. It's a conscious learning where we are aware and we are putting our concentration on learning. Right now, many of us are in this category here. The thing with intuition is that probably by way majority, our memory is built in our intuition. We are not even aware that we are building and storing information. And we are completely dependent on our intuition in so many ways, right? If you, for instance, are driving from home to work, say, and you need to find the way, right? You are not sitting and thinking consciously using your intellect. Okay, next I have to go left, then I have to go right. If you're shifting the gear, you don't need to think about it. So this is the storage we can use. Basically, we have two options, right? We have a diffuse state and we have a focus state. We have intuitive memory storage and we have an intellectual memory storage. When it comes to the retrieval, which is very critical, obviously, again, we have two options here. Either we can retrieve extrovert, we get inspiration from outside, like now you are receiving some inspiration from me, or you can have some inspiration introvert that sometimes you know that things pops up even if you are not trying to remember something. But let's say you go to the ATM, you need to be able to remember your PIN code, right? And that is an introvert retrieval you need to do. So like that, we can see basically in three different ways: visual, auditive, and psychosomatic. We can store basically in two ways: intuitive and intellectually. And we can retrieve basically in two ways, either extrovert or introvert. So this is explaining, and it's also summing up of some of the sciences that we know, some of the theories that we know about memory improvement. Now the question is, how do we convert this information into an understanding of how we form our memory personality? Because we want to convert this is a journey we are taking together now. We want to convert this into information that can give us access to some tools where we can actually improve our memory. This is also the origin of the 12 secret languages, and it is telling us how we're using these three memory creation phases here, how we're using them in different ways. So again, let's have a look on this lady. You remember this lady from the information flow we had here, the information wave? Now let's try and understand what is going on inside her to understand how our memory anatomy actually works. So you can see the lady here, she's receiving some visual information. You can see I have put some information drops here. There is some auditive information that is related to the ear. And then there's some psychosomatic, some feelings, I have put it for the heart, and some somatic, some body sensations or kinesthetic sensations. So she's receiving information in these three ways here. Now, when she's going to store it, you can see that it can happen intuitively and intellectually. So now something very interesting happens, that from the visual receival, you can either have a variation that is called visual intuitive or visual intellectual. So now you actually have two different ways of storing information. It can either happen intuitive visually or intellectually visually. And exactly the same thing happens with the auditive and the psychosomatic storage. So can you follow from three different ways of creating memory? We are suddenly into having 6 different ways of creating memory. Now, if we take it one step further and we start looking on the retrieval, you can remember from the previous illustration that there was an introvert option and there's an extrovert option. And that actually means, again, that the visual intuitive memory creation can have an introvert or it can have an extrovert expression. So like that, we end up actually having 12 rivers. If you consider the river, that is the metaphor I've tried to show here. It's like a flow where it hits some land and then it splits up to 12 different options here. Could you follow? So this is through the what I call the human memory anatomy. We end up having 12 very characteristic and unique ways of forming memory. Let's try and have a look at a few of them, just that you can understand how they're built. See, if it is memory formation that is used, that is created visual, intuitive, introvert, it is the viewer, which is represented or symbolized just with an eye. This person here needs just to see things. Now, this is the way that person will remember, by seeing the things, right? Now, if it was a visual, intuitive, extrovert person, the person needs to visualize it. That means draw it, paint it, knit it, weave it somehow, maybe in a software on a computer, somehow create some kind of visuals. I've showed that little brush thing here in the eye, right? So this person has to use some kind of extrovert activity to be able to remember, to form the memory. Now, if we come to the visual intellect, now it becomes a little different, because here we start applying the brains, right? If it's an introvert person, that is what we call a symbol analyst. And the symbol analyst is actually what you use to understand these symbols. To be able to understand these symbols here, you need to analyze the symbol. You can see here, this is the designer. Here you have to design it in the outer world, in the extrovert world, right? So here you have to take it out in the outer world. Here you just keep it inside yourself. If you could understand the visual part here, that is basically what is happening with the auditive part also. The auditive, intuitive, introvert person will be a listener. This person needs to listen to be able to remember. The auditive, intuitive, extrovert have to talk. The talker is a person that just explains what they have heard. They will not think about it. They will not analyze it. They'll not go in depth with it. And maybe you know some personalities of people that have that need to explain things. They are sharing their day. Maybe some of your family members, they have a lot of need to express the way that they have experienced the day. And sometimes you might feel also, this is a little too much in detail. I don't need all that detail. But that is basically the listener and the talker here that makes a good match, right? The person that talks a lot without a purpose, without a goal, but just talks is the talker. Now, what I want to stress is that all these 12 secret languages, as I call it, are all equally important. There is no high, there's no low, there's no right, there's no wrong. There is only what works for you. And many of us have actually created a personality where we are stronger in some than in others. And I must say, with the audience we are here, I'm very much sure that many of us have to be very strong in the auditive, intellectual introvert, the theoretic, because we've had to read a lot, we have had to listen a lot, and to understand and analyze and maybe share it in a conscious way. So many of us, we would not have reached this place if we didn't have a strong theoretic. I think this is probably a common ground all of us sitting here together we have. If you had been a laborer, would not have to use the intellect as much, and it would be a person that are much more in the feelings and in the physical body, right? So it's a person psychosomatic, intuitive, maybe in the extrovert. If you're a laborer, you need to be a doer, right? It can be a maid job, it can be a carpenter or a plumber. In many cases, they are more in the doer. Can you follow this? Now, the thing is that in our society, some languages are rewarded more than others. The academics are in general rewarded more than the laborers. That is either with pay or fame or name in some way or shape. So this is actually how we are building the 12 secret languages inside us, right? Now we have followed this journey of this lady here, and all of us are experiencing this inside ourselves. Of course, it's happening very fast, but broken up, we can understand there are these characteristics that we need to be alert about. This is a visual that are showing these 12 languages. Basically, you can see the first four languages, the visual languages, are represented with the eye. The next four are represented with the heads, the auditive, and the body are represented with the psychosomatic four languages here, right? Now, what you can notice is that the introverts, they're small, because introverts don't take the same space as an extrovert does, right? So I created it, the illustration like that. It's just a way to visualize these 12 languages here. Now, if we take a very quick view, we have already discussed some of them, right? Let's try and look here on the psychosomatic, intuitive introvert person. This is a feeler. As opposed, if we're going introvert, but in the intellect, it's an emotional analyst. So here, this person is just intuitively feeling the feelings. And here we are able to feel and analyze them. All of you people who are in psychology or are working with some kind of consulting or helping people on their way, you need to be very strong in the emotional analyst. You need to be able to feel that person, and you need to be able to analyze the feelings and the experiences of that person so that you can communicate in a way that can take that person to the next step. So maybe that is another common ground all of us here today we have, possibly. Here I'm showing you 12 secret languages, general characteristics. So here I'm just trying to drill a little more in depth the viewer, the listener, and the feeler. What are their characteristics? Now, as we discussed before, these secret languages, they show themselves in a lot of different situations. One is in the memory, one is in communication, one is in the teamwork, one is conflict resolution, one is the job profiling, one is in team roles you will have. It will show in many different ways. Here I'm showing you another little quick overview of the learning formats. Let's say if you are a viewer, what I'm trying to show here, if you are a viewer, this is the learning format you need to use. Watch the teacher carefully, ask to repeat visuals. Notice colors, shapes, and placement. Now, if you're a listener, you have to listen carefully to the teacher and ask the teacher to repeat. Whereas if you're a feeler, you need to feel positive about the teacher and the topic. Now, of course, there's much more to these. I mean, all 12 languages can be drilled in depth. And as we can show learning formats, we can also show communication. So if you're trying to communicate to somebody who's a viewer, right, you need to visually show something to the people. And you need to create the feelings in the people if you want to connect with the feeler. You can understand this is the surface of something that goes a lot deeper than that we can show in 1 hour of it. Now the question is, how can you benefit from this instantly? And this is the moment where I would like you to go in your web browser and just click the 12 secret languages. You will reach this homepage. This is the free online memory personality test. You click sign up and you will get this one here. You put your name, you put your email ID, you create a password, and then you can log in after that. I'll give you a minute to do that. So you come to this first page here, and it's explaining something about the 12 secret languages. What you need to do is go to the start test. So you just click here, go to start test. And there's a little introduction here, which is important that you follow. The approach to the test, to make it as valid as possible, the approach matters. In each case, you are represented to 2 statements. Here, I naturally listen more than I talk. I naturally talk more than I listen. And you remember we had a talk about the listener and the talker. I naturally listen more than the talker. That would typically be the listener, number 5. And then the talker, I naturally talk more than I listen. That would be the 6th secret language. So accordingly, you have to give some points here. Totally, you're suggested to give 2 points. So that means either you can give 0, and then you can give 2 in the other. Or you can give 1 and 1, or 0 and 2. So after answering all these questions here, there are 66 because we are matching all of the secret languages up against each other. Here you just click the submit. Obviously, I have not filled it out, but here you can see the test result after this. Then the test result will come here. Since I didn't give points on all of you can see I just gave 2 points. Now, when you're choosing memory techniques in the book that I'm releasing in the coming month, it's a division of memory techniques in these 3 categories here. So you need to understand if you're stronger in the visual type of languages or in the auditive languages or in the psychosomatic languages. Accordingly, you can choose the most efficient memory techniques for you. But it's also broken up here in all the 12 languages. So you can see, as we spoke, I gave 2 points to the listener, and I didn't give anything to the talker. So this was actually the first example of the question, right? Once you have calculated, obviously, it will show a total of 132 points once you're done with it. Now I only clicked one of them to finish it a little fast. So this is basically the online test. So the question is, how can we benefit even more from this new knowledge that we have been given? What I'm offering is that after the webinar, if you go and fill out your memory personality test, if you share your thoughts on WhatsApp, I think we are all of us in WhatsApp or Telegram. If you share your thoughts on WhatsApp, what was your experience with the test, and what did you learn about yourself? And if there anything you were surprised about, if you share your thoughts on WhatsApp, I will also try and respond to all of you and give you a little more input maybe, so that you can convert it into some practical action. Now, since many of us are teachers, it can be helpful both for you as an individual, but it can also be helpful in understanding your pupils, or if you're a parent, understanding your kids maybe. You are also very welcome to share the test with other people. It's a free test, so you're welcome to share the URL, or you are welcome to sit and do the test with people where maybe you're curious about your spouse or a good colleague. There might be some interesting stuff coming up, for instance, in the way that your communication is working, if there are sometimes some frictions in the communication. It's important to understand these 12 languages. We use all of them, unless we have some kind of handicap. But we use all of the languages, but some of us use some of them more than others. And there it can be helpful to understand what are your favorites. Because if you can understand your favorites, you'll understand how you remember and learn faster. But you might also understand this is also the way I communicate. And you might not match all the people in their favorite memory languages. So there it can maybe be a good idea to open a little up to present in new ways also. Yeah, this was just a reminder about the book. If you share your mail ID, the first couple of days, I'm giving the book away for $1. I'm doing this as a gratitude to some people that I have worked closely with. After a couple of days, the price is going to normal. So, but if you're interested in getting it pretty much for free, I'll be happy to share the release day. We can either have a Q&A if there are any questions. I have also prepared a practical exercise. The practical exercise was actually to teach people how to remember the 7 habits of highly effective people by Stephen Covey. I guess many of us have studied this, but obviously, again, if you can't remember them, how can you apply them? And how can you become better and better at it if you can't remember them? But if we are able to remember the habits, we are actually, while we are recollecting it, while we are retrieving the information, we are actually also in a short moment of self-reflection, where we are comparing where we used to be and where do we want to go and where are we now.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, please go ahead.
See, I'm I always feel that there is a selective memory works for me, because I remember I saw one person 30 years ago. When I saw him after 30 years, I remembered him. I mean, when I saw him after 30 years, I was able to recognize him. But for many, that was very brief. About a half an hour only I had met him. But there are people who I met, more frequently, or even the recent past. I was unable to recognize the name. Unable to recall the name.
But this is a very good example. This is a very good example, actually. So what happened is that you have received information, right? Try to go back and think in the 3 phases, right? You have received information equally, it seems, for both the persons, right? It seems that you received the information under the same conditions. But the thing is that one of them, the storage was different. One of them the storage was done differently. And that can either be done maybe with the visual focus, with visual languages. It might have been auditive languages, or it might have been some kind of psychosomatic language. And that is why you're able to retrieve them differently, because the storage was not done under the same circumstances. I think many of us know that if we are standing in front of a crowd of, say, 100 pupils, right, we will not be able to remember all 100 pupils. But if we interact with one individual that comes and shows much interest in our teaching, we kind of sympathize with that person, right? We start liking that person. And now we're putting some emotions on it, right? Now, the question is, what could be really interesting to find out is, what was it that made you remember that person? Because that is your secret formula to remember that other person also, and to remember any person in the future. In the book that I'm releasing, there's a separate chapter dedicated to remembering names and circumstances. And it's explaining in depth, actually, how either visually, auditive, or psychosomatic, how you build memory around the people that are important for you to remember. Now, as we showed in the illustration, it's not just about remembering as much as possible. No, it's about remembering what is important for you.
Sir, my question to Dan, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I congratulate for your very deliberate, enriching information on the subject of memory and how all the details, 12 secrets. Sir, my question to you is, does this memory, the strength of memory, will it varies according to the ages, development of the human being, right from adolescent to geriatric, whether the different stages of lifespan stages, whether the memory retention or memory retrieval, will it affect at different ages, sir? Can you throw some lights?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the answer is that very much. You see, when we start out as children and using our memory, we will be mostly in the intuitive memory creation. It's only when we move into the educational system that we start using the intellectual memory creation. In general, of course, there are parents that are trying to speed up the intellectual memory creation of the children also. But we start out with the mother language, and it's through our educational exposure, so to say, that we start building a father language. And the father language is the kind of the language that we need to learn to be able to manage in society, right? The mother language are the basic necessities. But when you get into schooling, you need to learn math, you need to learn grammar. There are many practical things you need to learn, and they all have a special language around it, right? That you need to learn. That is what we call the father language. So that is the first step. During our life, we are also exposed to different situations where it can be necessary to train certain languages more than others. Now, many of us, as we already discussed, many of us, we're coming from academic background, right? And we need to have a strong 7 theoretic, that language, the secret language 7, which is the theoretic. Many of us need us to have a very strong theoretic language. If it is not there, we need to learn it, no, because we need to read the books, we need to remember them, we need to listen to the lessons, we need to remember them, we need to be able to analyze, explain, go in depth, ask questions about, improve. So through life, the phases we're going through life, we will be exposed to some situation where we have to learn new languages. I can say for myself, I started a rigorous meditation practice 22 years ago. And that was quite a game changer for me, I must say, because I had to start feeling, right? Meditation is basically that you don't have any thoughts. And my academic background was all about thoughts. Suddenly I have to still my mind, and I had to start learning to meditate and just be. Feel my heart, be in the heart, meditate in silence, right? And that was not an easy journey, I would say, but it was a magical journey, right? trying to get to know yourself from inside instead of only living on the outside world, right? So maybe you can detect from yourself also that you have had different phases in your life where you were challenged to learn new languages that you maybe found a little difficult in the beginning. Like a child, once they start in school, parents will of course know the struggle that some of the kids has, right? And you have experienced probably also with your students that they are struggling getting into academic learning maybe. But also from your private and personal life, you might have experienced that in the beginning you're a student, right? Once you take a job, your languages maybe have to be different, right?
Right.
If you're a teacher, definitely you have to be extrovert, for instance. It's not enough with the theoretic, the 7 theoretic. Now you need to be the 8 debater also, right?
Right.
You need to be able to explain. Could you follow me, Shiv Kumar?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have to customize what I understand from you. Our profession to profession, a person has to customize his language so that he can have the clarity. So I must I'm very much thankful to you, sir, for your elaborate answer, and I'm convinced. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Shiv Kumar, you have already customized. That is the point. You have already customized certain languages. If you go back and do the tests, I would suggest all of you go back and do the test and try to answer as honest as possible. Don't think there is anything more right or wrong in this. There's only what you are. The more honest we answer, the more real the result will be also. So
Right,
if you
sir.
do that test, try to understand where do you have your favorites and where do you have your weak languages. Or
Right,
if
right.
you're a balanced person,
Sir, what will be the ideal age for that test to start with, sir? For the students, what will be the ideal age, sir?
yeah, but I think I would say from around 9th class, 15 years old or something in that range. I would
Okay.
think we have tried to keep the questions a little general. But the thing is that people with a little more life experience, it will be a little more easy for them to answer the questions. You try and take a look at it yourself and try and evaluate also what are the age groups you have in you're a teacher also?
I'm the school counselor, sir. I'm the school
Yeah,
counselor.
school counselor. Yeah, for job profiling, this is actually a very excellent profiling. And I think it cannot harm, it can definitely not harm to give them a chance to self-reflect a little about themselves, because that's what happens, right?
Yes.
And if they're able to fill all the questions, they'll definitely get some understanding of the person they are. And you might also find this is a whole separate book that I'm working on parallel with this other one here. But this thing about job profiling, you're actually able to discover with certain favorite memory languages, you will be more prone to success in specific jobs than others.
Okay, okay.
We mentioned a little about labor and academics, right? It is not the same languages you're using.
Okay, okay. Okay, sir. Got it. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan sir. I'm Dr. Veena, one of the core team members. I'm
Hey, Veena.
supposed to facilitate the question and answers, and the participants have volunteered with their questions. And thank you for patiently answering those. And we would really love to have your question and answer practical exercise soon with us. And I hope Suresh Kumar sir will arrange for another session with you, so that we all can have another enlightening session with you. Thank you so much, sir. And
Thank you, Veena. Thank you, Veena. I would love to show that. And maybe those of us, if there is a second half, those of that have done the test, maybe we can share some of our experiences. And through that, again, learn a little more about ourselves.
sure, sir. Sure, sir. Definitely, we could have that. And if any of the participants who have taken the test would like to share their experience with the test, that would be really helpful for others.
And with this note, I would like to ask you, Dan, one of the question. it is related to is that this test is you have done it and standardization or validation process in all over. I mean the global population. Is it very well suitable for Indian scenario also?
I have tried to make it as general as possible. There has been many rounds of improvement, and I would love to get some feedback on it also. If there are any, in your experience, if there are some things that, if there are some ways of formulating things, or if there are some of the questions that are difficult maybe to relate to, I would love to get some feedback on it. But it's definitely done so it should fit, I would say, every English spoken person. Obviously, you need to have the language right to understand the questions. So I think the only limitation is that now there was a question about the age group, right? And you need to have a certain amount of life experience to be able to answer the questions, right? If you have not been exposed too much in life, it'll be a little more difficult, obviously, to answer the questions. Or I would say it will be a little more cut sharp. I mean, you will be very strong in a few maybe, and very weak in some others, and it might not exactly reflect your actual personality, memory personality.
Thank you.
But I'm very sure all of us here that have joined today, it will fit very nicely. I'm very confident.
Fantastic. I would like to ask another question. Can we use this as one of the tool for career assessment also?
For what?
Career assessment.
Yes, you see, I'm working on a second book where job profiling is going to be a part of it, where you'll be able to understand how the different languages actually vibrates or matches certain lines of work or professions. So you can very well use the 12 languages for that. In the book that I am releasing in the coming month here, the focus is all about career creation actually, and how to build your career and how to build your business. So I'm concentrating on 3 topics, teaching people how they practically can remember, partly as we spoke about social relations, how to remember names and the circumstances around certain persons, because it's very helpful, you know, when you are in networking or when you are have a job where you have a lot of students or peers. The second topic being covered is how do you increase your work efficiency, especially when it comes to remembering your best practices. How do you remember them step by step in the right order? Many of us, we have best practices that we're using, right? So how do you remember that? And the third topic I'm practically touching on is about goal realization. How to formulate your goal and how to be able to remember your goals so that you actually stay on track, right? It's the same thing we just talked about, the 7 habits of highly effective people. If you cannot remember these habits, if you cannot remember your goals, what are the likelihood that you are continuously on the right road? It's definitely diminishing. But if it is always clear to you, it will definitely, the route will also be shorter. That is, I think, is pretty obvious.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes. Dan.
Thank you, Shubha ma'am, and thank you, Dan, for answering those questions. And the chat box is really flooded with email IDs, and I really don't know how we are going to send those books. Definitely, we will be facilitating our participants with the book as well. And yes, now is the time for placing our vote of thanks, and I call upon Ananya for doing the honors of vote of thanks. Ananya?
Here, ma'am. Thank you, Veena, ma'am, for coordinating the question and answer session. And now I'm really, really grateful and thankful today for having Dr. Dan Hansen here, because we have got a lot of input and a lot of knowledge gaining thing happened today. It was I really appreciate the way he explained things, and thank you so much, sir. You were very genuine, and you even gave us a thing to call you back, and you are ready to do one other session with us, wherein we discuss about things. It is a very genuine thing that has come out from your session, and we have gained a lot of knowledge today, and we also have doubts. And people are asking when and where can we get your books and other things. And thank you for sharing the link also. So we will definitely go through the questions, and we will come up with results, and we can discuss about it in the next session. Thank you so much for the valuable 1 hour of yours being spent with us. And I'm really happy and thanking you from the bottom of my heart for being here today, sir, and sharing your knowledge. Thank you so much for that. And I really thank all the participants who are here with us, traveling with us from April, who are being a support to us, and because of whom we are in our 242nd session today, which is a great thing. And without the participants, it's not possible. So I'm really thanking each and every participant for being here and supporting us throughout. And I thank all the core team members, Veena ma'am, Subhashri ma'am, Krishnan sir, Suresh sir, who is the reason why we are here, and Bharati, Akshay Lakshmi, and I really thank all of them who are supporting us throughout, and because of whom we are having a very smooth session that is happening for like 242 days exactly. So thank you so much, core team members, and thank you all participants. And thank you so much, Dr. Dan Hansen, for being here.
Dan Hansen, thank you so much. We really place in gratitude from the Department of Psychology, American College, and as well as from Madras School of Social Work. Thank you so much for joining us, and it was a wonderful session. We all enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your patience. I look forward to seeing some of you again, and hopefully all of you.
Sure, sir. All are showing thumbs up also.